Okay, so here's where we left off was with the synovial membrane. So we talked about the types of membranes, mucous membranes, well, cutaneous membranes, mucous membranes, serous membranes, and then this one, which is synovial. So now we're going to get into the integument particularly. And the integument is the skin or cutaneous membrane. And along with that, it's the derivatives of the skin, which are the associated structures. And that's some of what the guy talked about in the video regarding skin grafts. These are some of the concerns. Obviously, the outermost portion is simpler. The epidermis is simpler, but underneath that you have sweat glands, oil glands, and nerve endings and blood vessels and all those kinds of things that are kind of associated with the skin. So let's take a look at that. What are some of the functions of skin? You don't have to write all this. I think this is from page 97. This is from page 97 in your book. So why don't you flip your book open to that so you can take maybe a little bit closer look at it. But mechanical damage is just that, an actual injury by contact of some kind. and that happens all the time. You know, we have bumps and scrapes and things of that nature. Okay, then chemical damage is, you know, when you have, could be a chemical burn, something that the term for that would be caustic, something that's caustic, that burns your skin, not in a way like heat burns your skin, but a chemical burn of your skin. And, you know, maybe you've gotten some kind of acid on your skin before, battery acid or something like that, if you're working, or maybe a cleaner that's really strong that you're supposed to wear gloves and maybe you didn't have gloves, or you got part of it, like something like chemical, you know, paint stripper type stuff could cause chemical damage to your skin. Bacterial damage, you know, your skin protects against bacterial damage by having an unbroken surface and what it's calling an acid mantle, meaning there's kind of a coating of the secretions of your skin on top, from your lower layers of skin onto the surface of your skin would be slightly acidic, and that would inhibit the growth of bacteria. So, you know, the other end of that is if you have a break in your skin, then you're much more susceptible to bacterial damage. Ultraviolet radiation, the way that our skin protects against UV radiation is by melanin produced by our melanocytes that toughens our skin and actually makes it more resistant to sun damage. The melanin does. And then thermal or heat damage, how do we protect against that? Well, I mean, ultimately what we really are able to do, I mean, why do you pull your hand back from something that's hot? Because it's hot. We have hot, cold receptors, pain receptors. We recognize that that's problematic. That's what's difficult sometimes when someone's nervous system is a little diminished, like can happen with extreme old age. You know, you have to be really careful with older people whose skin receptors might not be as sensitive. And so now, you know, maybe they're cold, their circulation, oftentimes with age, your circulation is diminished as well. So you feel cold. Well, you might put your feet near a space heater or something to try to warm them up. But then if you don't have as sensitive of hot, cold receptors, then you may actually burn surface of your skin. So that's a real danger. And then desiccation. How do we keep our skin from drying out? Well, we have that keratinized layer on the outside that I referred to earlier as being almost like scales of a reptile, although not as pronounced, but it is kind of a drier layer that keeps water in. And you may or may not be familiar with the word desiccation. It means drying out. But what you might be familiar with is some products that you get, particularly things that are leather, for example, or even electronics may have it in them when they're packaged. If you've ever seen these little packets that are in things, it'll say desiccant, and that's meant to keep that item dry during shipping. It always says don't eat it or whatever, as though someone would be tempted to eat the little packet in there. But hopefully you know what I'm talking about. They might come in leather shoes or something like that, a little square item. It's got some chemical in it that's meant to absorb excess moisture in that package and keep the product from taking on moisture. It's called a desiccant. So this is, we're protected from desiccation or drying out by this. So a desiccant is something that actually does dry something out. Okay, so further functions, our skin also aids in body heat loss or heat retention. So the way that our body allows heat loss is by activating sweat glands and then evaporation of that sweat from the surface of your skin. Remember, the sweat itself doesn't cool us. The evaporation of the sweat, because evaporation requires heat, it's getting the heat from the surface of your skin. So as it evaporates, it's carrying the heat away with it. So sweating is one way that our skin actually aids in cooling our body. Additionally, we can also become flush. If you've ever exerted yourself, you know that your skin can get kind of a reddish hue. Well, the cause of that reddish hue in your skin is that your body has moved blood closer to the surface of your skin, so that blood, which is getting heat from the core of your body, can lose some of that heat to the surroundings. So in that way, your blood, it kind of acts like the cooling system of a car. That is, it's getting heat from deeper down, in the case of your car, getting heat from the engine, and it's carrying it out nearer the outside, out to the radiator, and moving air past it so that it can give off that heat. So if you have excess heat, that's what your blood is doing. It's getting some of that heat from the core of your blood and moving. Heat retention is quite the opposite. And in that case, we actually, your body actually shunts blood away from the surface of your skin. And that, along with the fact that that you have more surface area, is why fingers and toes and extremities are more susceptible to frostbite, because when you're cold, you're going to move blood away from that. It's a survival mechanism. It's important that you keep your core temperature high. If you're not able to keep your core temperature up, it's going to be lethal. So in an attempt to keep your blood from cooling too much, your body moves blood away from the extremities and away from the surface of your skin. And that's why the surface of your skin is susceptible to frostbite. And your extremities, your digits, for example, are susceptible to frostbite because you're going to be moving blood away from those areas. Aids in excretion of urea and uric acid, and that's contained in perspiration produced by sweat glands. And that's what creates the discoloration that you might see on a white shirt that you have or whatever from extreme perspiration. And then also our skin has the function of synthesizing vitamin D. And you may have heard people refer to vitamin D as the sunshine vitamin. So your skin is actually able to convert some molecules to vitamin D by the use of sunlight. Okay, so skin structure. And I would recommend that you're open to page 98. That's this page with that diagram. It's also the diagram that I think you saw on the video that we watched on Wednesday. It showed an overview of the skin and what it's made of. But two major layers. You have the epidermis. The epidermis is the outer layer made of stratified squamous epithelium. And if you remember from last chapter, what's the function of something having stratified epithelium? Well, your digestive tract has stratified epithelium, and the reason it has, remember, stratifications are layers, and the reason that it has those layers is as, in that case, as we eat things, it can buff it against the edge of the food tube and actually remove some of those skin layers. Same thing is true with the cutaneous layer on the outside, and that is, we have mechanical damage going on all the time. I mean, if you think about the way that you work with your hands, they're really fairly durable, and the reason is you're able to actually lose some of those outer skin cells that are layered and still maintain the continuity of our skin. It's often keratinized. That means it's hardened, and that's the term I've used to describe it. Becomes the deeper we go in our skin, the more alive and vascularized and all of that it is, and the closer you get to the surface, the deader it gets. I know deader is not a word, but it becomes more hardened. Dermis is dense connective tissue, and the term that comes up pretty often when we're talking about that kind of connective tissue is collagen, the extracellular matrix that kind of holds that together and makes our skin tough, ties it together. So here's that diagram, and we'll talk about each of these layers, but the epidermis is this portion, okay? And then as we go down, so this stratum corneum is cornified is the word. It's kind of means it's kind of pokey or hardened, cornified. And then the stratum lucidum has to do with it's kind of transparent. Then we have granulosum and so on. We'll talk about these layers going forward, but just have an idea of that picture. And again, I would remind you to take a look at page 98 in your book to adequately identify those as we go. So another word for subcutaneous, so we might hear the term, the place you might have heard that before is subcutaneous fat. And what that means is just the fat layer that's just below your skin. And I think I made reference to this before when we were talking about epithelium, maybe with aging. We lose much of our subcutaneous fat. This is talking about subcutaneous tissue in general, not just the fat portion. But it does say that it's composed mostly of adipose tissue. But as you age, that's one of the reasons that there are two reasons really that your skin wrinkles when you age. One of those is this: you lose some of that subcutaneous fat. So instead of having that fat layer pushing up, and that's why people get injections under their skin, because they've started to lose that. And a little unusual, but nonetheless, that's what some people do to make their skin look smooth again, is have something injected underneath to kind of take the place of that loss of fat tissue, or adipose tissue. So that's one of the reasons that skin wrinkles with age. The other reason that it wrinkles with age is it loses its elasticity. So, once it becomes stretched, it kind of stays stretched, and you end up with this excess skin, you might say, and wrinkling that results from that. The other term that's in there is hypodermis, and probably where you may have heard that before is you may have heard the term hypodermic needle. Well, a hypodermic needle means a needle that's meant to inject something just below the skin. And so that's actually what it does. Okay. I think we're gonna quit with that, and we'll pick up with that on Monday. But so that gives us just kind of an overview of the layers of skin. We'll get into the specific layers on Monday. So for Monday, what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to answer on your study guide 1 through 24. 1 through 24 on your study guide. Okay? And we will meet again on, I said Monday. I know we don't meet on Monday, on Tuesday. So when you come to class on Tuesday, have 1 through 24 completed on your study guide. And have a good weekend.